You're listening to Nurture Your Zest. I'm your host, Ashleigh King, and I will introduce you to a wealth of interesting, fascinating individuals from all walks of life who will share their stories, how they've overcome challenges, and you will find out their top tips for success. Through this podcast, you can gain tips to grow and change your life and the way you see the world, and help you to nurture your zest. Hello and welcome to Nurture Your Zest. My name is Ashleigh King and I'm delighted to be here with Douglas Dinwiddie. And as many people say, what is in a name? And that is a very strong name. So Doug, can you tell us a little bit about you, but also your name?
Yeah, the name's a bit of a funny one. I mean, it's actually been an unbelievable help over the years. Even when I was at university, when I was going to pick up coursework and things like that, they'd always know exactly where my work was because Dinwiddie's like the only Dinwiddie that you're ever going to see. So it's a bit of a weird one, but it's from southwest Scotland, which is where I was born in Dumfries. And I think the Dinwiddies in that area, most of the Dinwiddies I've ever met are all my immediate family. I've never really met anybody else, a couple like over the years maybe. But so yeah, born in Dumfries, grew up there, moved to the northeast when I was about 6 years old, and then kind of set up roots here really. And I used to have a Scottish accent many moons ago, but that's disappeared now, unfortunately, over the years.
So what's interesting is, like me, you've got an unusual accent, which is really helpful, actually, when you're chatting to people, because they don't know where you're from, and I don't think you sound like you're from the northeast or from Scotland. It's a really interesting one, except you say certain words like, really? I can't say it the way you do, but there are certain tells.
I was about to say really there, actually, that one, but yeah.
So we know a little bit about your upbringing then, and you moved to the northeast, and you're still in the northeast or in the north of England. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so predominantly I'm managing director of White Digital, which is a web agency based in Darlington. I set that up 7 years ago now. And it was a side hustle when I first started it out. I actually used to caddy on the European Tour for professional golfers. I did that for like 10 years. And it was great fun doing that, and had a great time, in South Africa and all over the world with that. And that was really good fun for a long time. But set up White Digital and was kind of working on that on the side until around 2018 when, White Digital got to a stage where it was kind of could support me and support my lifestyle. And really ever since then, the growth has been quite considerably faster ever since we started doing that. So it's kind of been a bit of a journey. I was kind of fortunate in a few of the things there, like the caddying thing. I was on the European Tour, so we were generally east of the UK, so we're ahead in time zones. So I would find myself in, say, Dubai, and I'd caddy in the morning in Dubai, finish at, say, 12 o'clock, get back to the hotel, have a shower, get to my desk in the hotel room and start selling websites in the afternoon, which happened to be 9 a.m. in the UK, so I could effectively get 2 days of work in one day. So you look back over little certain things like that, and there was some things there that serendipitously were really in my favour, the fact that I was actually able to do that. And then fast forward to now, White Digital's got a team of 14, soon to be 15, well actually possibly soon to be closer to 20 actually next month, because we're bringing 5 new people in next month. And then I also run Properties Unique, which is a service accommodation business in Newcastle as well. So a lot of the time it's people like, a lot of the artists that come to act at the theatre in Newcastle, they'll come and stay in our apartments and things like that as well. So we've got that. That's another team of 15, 18 people over there as well. So I'm a bit busy at the moment.
Definitely sounds that way, and it also seems that you're not work shy at all. No. However, I'm hearing that, and I'm wondering, has there been a magic secret for your success? Because you are in a lot of great papers and getting a lot of traction online, and obviously recruiting well and growing as a team. But is there anything you can attribute your success to?
I think it's an accumulation of multiple things over a long period of time is maybe the easiest way to put it. I can actually remember starting out, I was actually living with a friend and renting a room from a friend when I was still caddying and White Digital was still young. And I can remember it was just kind of me calling people, asking if they wanted a website really, right at the very start. And I can remember kind of thinking, God, it'd be so much easier if the phone was ringing, my phone was ringing. And now it's actually the other way around. I kind of like really happy when my phone isn't ringing. So it's really interesting that as you kind of get a little bit further down the journey, the gravity of the whole thing eventually starts pulling stuff towards you. So after a time, it just gets easier. You know, you're not looking to kind of generate that activity. You're almost just trying to manage the quantity of activity that you've got going on. It just, life gets a bit easier in some ways and harder in other ways as well.
So in terms of as you've gotten busier and things are going faster, and you know there is that energy, and it's you know, as certain things happen, you attract more amazing opportunities. Have you become more protective of your own energy and who gets access to you?
Do you know, that's something that I'm probably going through at the moment, actually, to be honest with you. Like, I'm in the early stages trying to kind of manage that level. Caitlin, who's my exec assistant, we've actually been having a chat over the last few days about trying to manage diaries and just how much is in. I was chatting to a friend of mine, and he was like, "What's wrong with your diary, Doug?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "It is to the rafters full every single day. Like, mine's empty. Like, I'm playing golf on Friday and that's all I'm doing, you know." And it was quite interesting because for me, I just thought that was normal. But then at the same sort of time, I kind of want my diary to be that full. You know, I don't really want a normal life. So I really have to be doing abnormal things if I don't want a normal life. So I'm quite happy for it to be full. But it's just a case of trying to manage exactly what's the best thing to go in there. I'm still working on that. But as long as there's room for like time to breathe and time to take time for myself and stuff like that, I'm kind of happy to have it as busy as it possibly can be, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. Not everybody loves that busyness. I totally get it. The more busy I am, the more my productivity and output is. You know, I get more done if I've got lots of projects on. But I know we're all different, and it's interesting to hear your reflections about hearing other people's diaries being so empty. At the same time, you know, I know we've spoken before about some of your favorite books. So one, for example, I know that you love is Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. Yeah. And so I'd like to ask you, you've mentioned you love to be busy. Yeah. But what does the power of now mean to you? How do you relax?
I think, like, so when I first kind of started the journey, I started, you know, reading books and learning a lot of different things or whatever, and, you know, started getting into meditation and things like that for a long time. And then, you know, Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now, he's also got another one called A New Earth, which is a really good read as well. Power of Now was kind of like my accompaniment on most car journeys for about 4 years, to be honest with you. It just got, you know, I'd listen to it over and over and over again. And I think my big takeout from that is that you don't actually need to have a quiet life to have times of presence and quietness. Like, you can take that presence whilst doing things, and it's a case about being present in each action that you do. And what weirdly that means is that you're never in a situation where you kind of feel stressed or like somewhere where you don't want to be, because actually if you're just present doing the piece of work and you're focusing on the thing that you're doing at that time, it kind of gives you that space. And I think the thing for me is it's like a case of making sure that when you're doing the thing that you're doing, you're focused on doing that, and that's equivalent is important when you're taking time off. So when you're actually off, you're not thinking about work, and you're not, you know, trying to solve that problem in your head. When you're off, you're actually off and you're not doing any work, because that means that when you're on, you can also be fully on and fully present in that. And I think if you manage that balance really well, so when you're off, and when you're on, it just makes life a little bit easier, and it maybe means you can fit a bit more into your diary, because when you're on, you're actually doing the thing you should be and not half on, if that makes sense.
Also, as you're growing, you know, you mentioned you may be going up to 20 soon at White Digital, and you've had so much explosive growth. There is also a duty of care as a leader to make sure that you take rest, because A, you need to be there for your team, and B, you need to model a great example, right? Yeah,
not very good at that one. No, that's actually been discussed a lot recently, and it's like you take rest as and when you need it, and you know, I don't really feel like I'm a person that needs to take like long times off right now, you know. It just hasn't been something to do. And maybe that's because I manage my time well, because when I'm off, I'm off, and when I'm on. But there is this example that needs to be set to the rest of the guys as well. So there is talk of a 2-week holiday coming up soon. Should probably be somewhere spent on a golf course, hitting balls somewhere warm, I would have thought. But yeah, so there is that little bit of it. But also, you know, I'm going through a phase now where, you know, there is a bit of gravity to everything that we're doing. We are generating quite a lot of work. We are generating quite a lot of tasks to do, jobs to do, things to do. It's quite enjoyable, you know, like rolling with that for a little while and just enjoying that all that's kind of going on, you know.
And also there is that, idea that if you love what you're doing, if you are doing your own thing, building your own empire, it's so much fun. So I totally get that.
Yeah, like I wake up every day and I love what I do. And the big purpose of starting White Digital is that everybody that works there also wakes up every day and loves what they do, and they're never sat in their office kind of watching the clock wishing they weren't there. We have unlimited holidays, so people can literally take as much time off as they want, but we actually end up having to push people to take their statutory holiday. That's kind of where we are as a business at the moment, and I would like to think that's because they actually really enjoy coming in the office and pushing the business forward that little bit every single day. And surely them making the choice to be there is a lot better and also me making the choice to be there, a lot better for the quality of the work and the value we would provide if they were being made to be there because they had to get their hours in or whatever.
It's an interesting thing. I've actually done quite a lot of research into the idea of unlimited holiday, and it does seem that when you give that option, many businesses have that challenge of actually asking people to take leave. So it's a really interesting idea. I'd love to know what is so special about golf.
Apart from it's a mild addiction and it being like something that has to be questioned. I come from a very golfy family. Like golf is, my grandpa played golf, my dad played golf, my uncle plays golf. I was given my first set of golf clubs at 4 years old, and so was my older brother, who ended up being a pro golfer and playing on the European tour and still plays golf now. It's pretty much been a companion the whole way along my life, really. But I don't know, as you kind of grow older a little bit, and I don't know. I've always been quite sporty. Getting a bit older, I can't play rugby anymore because my knees and my neck have given out and things like that. Whereas golf, I feel like something you can play into your later days. It's just also an endlessly fascinating game because you can always get a little bit better at it. You can always learn something new and you can always figure something out. Like a lot of people say, it's a great metaphor for life. You can hit a really good shot and it can end up in a really bad spot, and you got to learn how to deal with that, and you got to get your things together and go back and try and make a really good shot the next time, and that might not work out, and you just got to keep plugging away, and there's kind of that whole metaphor for it. When it comes to the business stuff, like you can learn so much about a human being playing a game of golf with them. The way they react to something bad happening. Are they going to throw their golf club across the court? Are they going to snap it over their knee? Are they going to try and roll the ball out the trouser leg and cheat and things like that? Or are they going to ultimately have a really bad round of golf but be really good company the whole way round and actually really enjoyable person to spend time with and things like that as well. So I don't know. It's just one of these games where I feel like it's got so many facets that make it interesting. And then when it comes to the business thing, I've never been one for a networking meeting where you're just going shoving your cards in people's hands and 60-second elevator pitches and things like that. I just don't think that's how business is done. In golf, you're spending 3.5, 4 hours or something, hopefully no longer than that, where you actually kind of get to know a little bit about them and their personality and their character, and you can actually really learn them as a human being. And I think that's really been a great part of the whole thing for me. Plus, it's a great excuse to get out of the office, and I can say I'm going networking, and actually I'm just going for a game of golf. So
it's a great way to spend time outdoors in nature, which is beautiful. Yeah. Get your meditative state that you might through golfing. All that concentration, being in a different space, which is important for creativity. Yeah. But also, getting to meet people. So for anyone watching or listening, they might be interested to know that I actually know of several people who are going for golf lessons to up their game so that they can hang out with you more. So I find that really funny, actually. Yeah. If you want to hang out with Doug, you need to play golf. Yeah. I think that's really cool. Yeah, I mean, one of the questions I have for you is, you've spoken about how great golfing is and how you can meet people and observe them and how they react to things. Does that help you as well to think, maybe you really like someone, you want to work with them, but then you actually play around a golf with them and realize that they're really not someone you want to spend a great deal of time with? Does that happen? Fortunately,
it's never really happened. I've never played golf with someone and they have actually tried to cheat, so fortunately I've never actually. It's normally the opposite. You spend 4 hours with someone, you can kind of get a feel. Like, often you'll meet people and you kind of get on with them, but it's like you're never going to be best mates or whatever. Sometimes you'll meet someone, whether it's on the golf course or going for a drink or dinner or whatever, and within a few seconds you've immediately got an affinity and you get on really well. And it's that sort of thing. So you do learn stuff. Fortunately, I've never come across anyone that's like snapped their club over their leg because they got a bad break or something. it'll be an interesting story when I get there. But like for me, you know, growing up through golf, you know, I used to be quite an angry golfer when I was a kid. I have snapped clubs over my leg when I was 14, 15 years old and things. Now, I very rarely get angry about anything on a golf course, as I very rarely get angry about anything in life. So but you learn a lot of those sort of things through there, and you do learn like how to deal with a bad break and things like that. So you can kind of almost self-analyse yourself and say, like, how do I react in these kind of situations or whatever as well. So it's good for that.
So what's the secret then behind dealing with that anger? How did you, become so enlightened?
It's Eckhart Tolle, to be honest with you. It was the power of now. You know, like, I think it's almost inevitable that, you know, if you, I don't know, in business world, you make a play, give someone a responsibility to do something and it doesn't quite come off. Like, there can be an immediate kind of annoyance and anger to all the rest of it, and that's an inevitable feeling that's going to come up, you know, like it's okay to feel that way. But having that presence to go, oh, look, there's that feeling again. Right, it doesn't really serve me to like act that feeling out, so I'm just going to kind of notice it and go, okay, there it is, and carry on past that. Like, that is such a core skill to be able to learn, because if you're kind of living on the back of emotion and making decisions on the back of emotion, they're very rarely going to be a logical, rational decision. They're going to be an irrational decision based on lots of other factors that probably aren't even there in reality. You know, like your own self-beliefs and your own opinion about what should have happened there, and that's just your own opinion of the whole thing. So I think it's having that awareness about like those feelings coming through, whether it be anger, annoyance, frustration, whatever it is, realising that that's what it is, and just kind of going, oh, there's that feeling again, and kind of moving on past it. It's kind of hard to get annoyed after that, because you start kind of laughing at yourself a little bit when it comes up, you know.
You do seem to laugh at yourself a lot and be very laid back. Yeah. And I'm curious, do your family or friends laugh at you at all in terms of like all this meditative stuff? Yeah, and what do they think? Because there is also sometimes an idea that, you know, like, I don't know, guys or men should be strong and they shouldn't have feelings. And thankfully that's changing. But I'm curious what your friends and family say.
Yeah, I get ripped quite a lot. Yeah, especially in the earlier days, you know, like when I was just starting out, and like White Digital and Properties Unique and the whole business side of things was essentially an idea in my own head, you know, and it was only really me that believed it. It wasn't a real thing. Did it literally exist in my own head? Now it gets a little bit easier for people to kind of believe you, because there's actually people in an office doing work, and you know, like it's a bit of a thing now. So it was really easy to take the mick out of me, you know, years and years and years ago. I probably still get the mick taken out of me now, but I think it's probably more tongue in cheek rather than real now. Like, I think, you know, you can see the progress and you can see the evidence of it kind of working, you know. Like, there is still a stigma around blokes, you know, like not being able to speak about things like that, you know. And, you know, you look at all the different rates of like suicide, men's suicide, women's suicide and everything like that. There's obviously a bit of something going on there around things like that, you know. But I do think it is changing. You know, I speak to lots of friends. I worked in professional golf for 10 years. They're all meditating on the golf course. They're all talking about presence and presence of mind and being in the shot and being in the moment and all that kind of stuff. You know, like it's starting to like propagate through professional sport and more successful people, and eventually it'll kind of move on down. So it's definitely changing over time. But I do still get the mick taken out of me, just generally, just for being a bit of a plonker a lot of the time, to be honest.
It's a good word.
Yeah.
I like that, and I think it's a really important point around, you know, some of the pressures on men as well. You know, we've recently had International Women's Day, and there's been all kinds of wonderful things going on in the media and the news, as well as some not so good things. But I think there is definitely this idea sometimes that men don't feel or don't have feelings, and it's great to hear that, you know, you and your mates are having those conversations and talking. And I think that can actually be why the golf course is so magical, because you're having those connections and time outdoors and processing whatever it is that you need to feel. So that's really cool. I'd like to know, and I'm sure anyone listening or watching would as well, have you ever had a time in your life that's felt really difficult, and how did you get out of it?
I mean, yeah, there's a long and the short of it. You know, like I struggled through the back end of school. I ended up getting expelled from school a lot of years ago, and generally was, you know, in a particularly bad place, I suppose, from like my late teens into kind of my mid-20s, really, like really wasn't kind of happy. And in a weird sort of way, like actually I went to university, got a degree, started caddying on the European tour, like outside world, pretty good, really, like from most people's perceptions, but I wasn't happy at all. And, you know, I just kind of had a bit of a realisation one day that I think I was always kind of stuck in the idea that, you know, when you left school, you'd finish learning. And then I had this realisation in my mid to late 20s where actually, like, that's just the start. Like, you can learn your entire life. So I started reading a lot and trying to understand lots of different things. And, you know, reading like Eckhart Tolle. There's a really good philosopher called Alan Watts that I listen to a lot of the time, and he's got a big bit called You're It, which is a really interesting thing. Read around loads and loads and loads of different things, and I think that really kind of opened my eyes to the fact that actually a lot of people are struggling a lot of the time anyway. Most people find life really difficult because life's hard. And I think there's, you know, you go through and the vast majority of what you read you probably forget, but if you pick up 4 or 5 like really key things that you can kind of make a stable part of your life and you can build something on, all of a sudden there are these things that can kind of go back to, like the Eckhart Tolle stuff. You can go back to that at any stage. When it's ever stressful and you feel like the world's getting on top of you, you can literally go and sit and have a cup of coffee, and within 15 minutes you're kind of back to being on a level playing field, you know. And when you kind of get to bits and pieces like that, it builds. So for me it was the learning. It was like, and that's kind of like rings true for me the whole way through now. You know, like there is literally nothing that you can't learn. If you're ever like saying that you can't do something, that is just a perception. You can go back and you can learn how to do that thing. You may not have like a natural ability at it, or you may not even be like naturally lean towards doing that sort of work, and it may end up being that you ask somebody else to do that piece of work for you, but you can go and learn it if you go and put enough time into it. And I think it was really that moment where I started learning all these different things, where all of a sudden the world started being a bit of an easier place to live in, and things started going for me rather than against me all the time, if that makes sense.
Sounds like that self-reflection and, you know, just working through stuff and having the curiosity to really, and the courage to look at whatever was going on for you and have a different perspective. I really love that. I'd like to bring it back to White Digital now, because I know that I've talked a lot about you, which is awesome, but you do also have a brilliant organization that you've created from your mind, which is awesome. So I know that one of the things you are as a team, as a business doing this year is supporting 3 charities, and you've made an incredible pledge to actually raise £30,000 across these 3 charities. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that, but also why is it so important to you to give back?
So one of my core philosophies in the whole thing is like it's a value provision. The world's like a value provision thing, you know. Like when I first started out, it was all about like making money. If I'm brutally honest with you, like it's about making money. And one of the best lessons that I've ever learned is that the best definition for money is that it's a store of value. So in the easiest way possible, if you want more money from the world, you need to provide more value to the world. And as long as you're focused on the value you provide to the world, the money coming back the other way will sort itself out. So the charity thing and a lot of the other stuff that we're kind of getting involved in, it's all about trying to find extra ways that White Digital can provide value to the world. And it's just kind of a simple kind of equation, really. You know, we're now focused entirely on that. Where is it that as a group of relatively young, relatively able people, like what other things can we be doing in the world which is actually going to go and provide value, you know? So that's where the charity stuff comes in. Like a lot of it is revolved around walking or exercise or whatever. Mostly walking these days with the dodgy knees, but you know, like it's around being active and going out and doing these sort of things. And if we can help these charities out at the same time, then there's a value add to the world. So
Doug, can you tell us about any other exciting projects you've got going on? Is there anything you can tease us about?
Well, we're actually starting our own podcast at the moment, actually, which it's an interesting one when you go down, I'm going to start a podcast, and you don't realise how long that road really is. And it is a long old road. And there are a lot of questions to be answered and things like that on the way. And, you know, just like the way that, you know, I do things and we do things, it has to be done right, you know, and we're kind of like a buy cheap, buy twice kind of person, you know, if you're going to do it properly sort of thing. So fortunately that has to be the same with the podcast. We have to go to the nth degree to make sure it's absolutely spot on. So, you know, there's a bit of work to do there, but it's another one of those things. It's how can you provide more value to the world? You know, like we have some really interesting clients that are trying to do some quite interesting things. You know, and I have a network of friends and acquaintances that are doing really interesting things as well. So if we can provide a little bit more value to the world just by, you know, creating some content and put it out there in the world, then we thought that was another bit of value add that WD as a group of people that can do that sort of thing could do. So yeah, more on that soon. But we're going to call it the Cellar Room Sessions.
I think it's a fantastic name, and sharing stories is what it's all about. It's what brings people together. It's what brought you here today to share your story and your story of White Digital. I think it's really exciting that you're starting a podcast, because you've mentioned how busy your diary is and how busy, you know, the business is and how it's growing, but having that time, whether it's once a week or, you know, however you choose to record, just to take a step away, chat to someone, maybe have a glass of whiskey or whatever you do, and just think and enjoy someone's company. I know that's what I love about podcasting and making content, like having this chat right now. So I'm almost out of questions for you, but there is a question that I love to ask, and I ask everyone. So for those who are new to watching my show, because I know that you will bring in your own audience, Doug, of super fans, but Nurture Your Zest is about the adversity that we go through in life. So everyone goes through prickly situations, and it's about how through courage, creativity and curiosity, you can find inspiration to nurture your zest for life, the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, the thing that lights you up. So I'd like to know, what is your number one word to nurture your zest?
It's a great question. And when you're thinking for the answer to this, you could run through so many different things. But I think out of all of mine, I'd end up setting on accountability, believe it or not. And I'd love it to be dream more and all the rest of it. And accountability sounds quite kind of practical rather than kind of ethereal. But that accountability part kind of runs through, like, you know, if I go all the way back to when I wasn't happy with my life, and I could have taken the choice, as I did for many years, to blame the rest of the world and say it wasn't my fault. It was only when I actually got to the stage where I was like, actually, this is my fault. Like, I can go and change who I am, and I can go and change the way I behave in the world, and the world will change the way it behaves towards me after the fact. You know, and it's the accountability bit also kind of runs through, you know, like, it is on you. If you want to go and build a business, it's on you to go and do that. You know, if you've then got employees and you want them to do a certain sort of job, if they're not doing that job, it is still on you. Like, it's a way that you're managing, it's a way that your job description is, it's a way that you know, communicate with that person. If you can make everything your fault, essentially the whole time, that then means it's in your control to change it. And I think if you're big enough and strong enough to stand up and just own every problem and say that it's my fault, and that means you can then go and fix it. So I feel like the accountability bit actually gives you the freedom to actually be able to go and do whatever it is you want, because you're going to have it on your shoulders.
It's quite empowering as well if you're leading a team and you're giving them accountability for what they do as well, and autonomy sometimes, then it gives you the power to take responsibility. So you mentioned the word fault, but also it's, you know, it's taking responsibility. So there are no faults. Yeah,
absolutely. And I use the word fault because it's stronger, and people don't like to be told it's your fault. But I'm quite a strong kind of guy. I don't mind someone saying it's my fault. Like, that's absolutely fine by me. Other people react differently to that word or whatever, but the accountability bit for me is the core of a business functioning well. You know, like, if someone say they're going to call the ball on a particular job, like, that's my responsibility, I'll get that done, and then they don't, you know, they need to feel bad in some way that they've kind of dropped the ball on that one. They don't need to feel bad that they're a bad person and that they can't do the job well. That's then going too far to the point where you're actually beating yourself up. But if they can feel bad to the point where it's like, that was my accountability and I've let the side down, how can I go and change to make sure that I don't do that again? And I think it's having accountable people around you is the only way of doing it. I always call it slopey shoulders and square shoulders, is my little saying at the moment. Like, having slopey shouldered people that all the time it'd be that there's a reason why I didn't do this, I couldn't do that because of them, and it's a very, very tiring game to play, because you end up having to explain to them all these things and not actually real reasons why it couldn't get done. Because if you'd actually got it done, you would have been able to push through all those sort of things. So it's about having square shoulders and having things sit on your shoulder and say, no, I'll be the one to go and sort that thing out. And that means you being accountable and holding other people accountable, but then also knowing that it might be the way that you communicated with that person or whatever that thing is. So, yeah, accountability.
I think it's a really interesting choice of word, and honestly, I'm quite surprised at your choice of words. So being so laid back and a fun and funny person, and getting to know you over a little while, I think one of the things I'm most surprised at is how logical and like hardworking and focused you are sometimes. I don't think people always realize that about you. And I would love to know, do you think there's anything about you that you realize that other people aren't aware of?
Things that I know about myself that other people aren't aware of? God, that's a very good question, that. I think like the interesting thing, the thing that a lot of people notice about me is my very laid back kind of nature, you know. And I do have this kind of really laid back attitude towards a lot of things. But actually in my head, I'm not very laid back. I think I've developed this kind of like, and I am quite a laid back person. It's not like I get stressed out very often, but I've developed a way of kind of dealing with things in a really relaxed way and never really getting. And I think a lot of that actually happened when I was younger and I really wasn't very happy, and I was battling kind of, you know, depression and all that kind of stuff. Like I think I managed to build a kind of face on that kind of came back absolutely relaxed when actually I wasn't. And I think that mask will kind of like stays on now without me even really need to try it, where in actual fact it's that swan swimming in a lake thing, you know, looking really calm, relaxed underneath, and yet your feet are going 100 miles an hour underneath. I think that's probably quite a good analogy for me, you know, like I am, although I manage my time off and manage my time on, I really enjoy thinking about, you know, solving problems and things like that. So I spend a lot of time with my feet paddling away when I might be, I don't know, doing other things and looking quite cool, calm, relaxed. So, yeah.
Interesting. I love hearing more about the people behind the mask. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Really nice to chat to you. You've been listening to Nurture Your Zest. You can find us online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn at Nurture Your Zest. If you've liked today, please subscribe. You can also leave us a review if you're feeling extra kind. Today's podcast has been made available through the kind sponsorship of Nat Branding Company. We look forward to catching up with you again soon as you learn to nurture your zest.